It's time for Dirt Daily, and I am back in the shop with my little Flatfender. This is my 1946 CJ2A. I've done a couple videos on this so far, and everybody seems to love it, so I thought I would do another little project on it. The last time I had it on a video, I figured out that the transfer case was not turning. Something in the transfer case or the transmission is not turning, or they're not disengaging when I put them in neutral, and so I wasn't able to turn the rear drive shaft to move the vehicle back and forth. So I should dive into that today. But I also have other things that I need to do to it, like the engine. I don't know if the engine turns. I haven't even looked at it really, anything other than pointing out that it is the stock engine or a stock style engine that's under the hood. So I should fix the gearboxes, I should figure out the engine, and the passenger side frame right in front of the passenger front tire is broken. So I should fix that as well. I should get it all back in line and then weld it and gusset it and plate it and make it all perfect. But sometimes it's easy to just jump on a project that is fun and I can get done hopefully quickly. Kind of keeps your motivation up on whatever your project is. So instead of diving into any of those important things, I'm going to do something that's not really important, but is still, I don't know, I think it'll make the Jeep better. I'm going to fix this front bumper. This Jeep came with a tow bar, and I didn't really like the tow bar. The tow bar was kind of ratty. I don't really need a tow bar because I have a trailer. So I took the tow bar off, which involved some heat in order to get some of the bolts loose, because some of the bolts were kind of rusted and rotten. And that tow bar is actually more designed for a tractor than for behind a truck or a Jeep, because it doesn't use a trailer ball. So tow bar off, and then my first idea was I should put a winch plate on it. I could put a winch on this. And then I was like, you know what? I don't know. I mean, maybe down the road, but I think for now, I just want a quick, simple project. I really don't want to put the weight of a winch on the front right now because the frame's broken. And I kind of just want to get it back to looking kind of stockish. It is a farm Jeep. It's never going to be brand new, perfect, but I do want to fill in this gap where the old something was cut away. You can see here this 1/2-inch plate that's welded in, and I don't know why they cut the bumper out like this. I don't know, maybe they ran into something and bent everything. Who knows the history of it, the story of it. I'd love to track down the farmer that used to own this Jeep and kind of find out some of the stories, like these really wacky homebrew like recovery points, which probably not the best, safest spot to try and yank this Jeep out of, especially considering the frame rail's broken over here. But I don't really want to remove them because they're cool farm Jeep status. But this section here, I just want to fill in. So I basically want a piece of plate that comes up, over and down in a little bit, welded along the bottom, up the sides, over the top, and down. Maybe put a gusset in somewhere to kind of help support it, but it's going to be pretty strong if it's all welded back to this stock bumper. I'm going to start by measuring this opening, which is pretty much 18.5. And then this opening, which is 3 3/8. And then it's going to go back 2 inches. So I'm going to start with this piece of rectangular tubing, and I want to cut it. The top and the front face is all I'm going to use. I may let the back kind of kick over, maybe 3/8 of an inch, so that it just has a little bit more integrity. But for the most part, none of this is really going to be like, need to be super structurally strong because I have this 1/2-inch plate behind it. But I have this piece, and if I cut it down, I can fit it right inside there, weld it up, and then maybe spray paint it with some similar green color if you're really that worried about it. And nobody will ever know the difference, or if they do look closely, they'll just be like, farm Jeep. I'm gonna cut this piece of rectangular tubing with a chop saw. My chop saw, I can never get a perfectly square cut with it. It always seems to be off a little bit. I don't know if the blade waddles a little bit or the stop is crooked or what it is, but I'm not really going to worry about that because I'm welding the ends in, and I'm going to cut it just a little bit over and then grind it back until it fits just perfect. I am going to mark it with a square And I have a piece of soapstone here. You could also mark it with a Sharpie. I'm going to look at each end and see if either end looks pretty square to start with. Nope. Yes. So, since I know one end is pretty square, I'm going to measure off of that end. What did we say? 18.5. So, maybe we'll make it 18 5/8. So I'm going to put that in the chop saw and cut it just past that line or just through the top half of it. Also, I like to wear gloves when I'm working with metal. Some people are like, oh, I don't need gloves. That's fine. I like to wear them because all you got to do once is run your finger along the sharp edge of a piece of metal that's just been cut, and then your finger's cut open and bleeding, and you're not getting stuff done. And when I just want to work on something fun, like I don't see a problem with putting on gloves. Also, hearing protection. My ears ring all the time. Like if I'm sitting still and not being occupied by something, I just instantly notice my ears are just constantly ringing. So I don't think that tinnitus, which is the ringing of your ears, is caused by loud noises, but it's definitely not helped by loud noises. So put on your safety gear, put on your glasses, put on your gloves, plug in your chop saw. When you are using a chop saw or a grinder or doing any metal work, think about where the sparks are going. If your nice Jeep is parked right where their sparks are going, you're going to get sparks, dust, and grinding dust all over your nice Jeep. As soon as that gets wet, that'll make marks in the paint. Maybe there's some rags you had just wiped down something with brake clean and you're throwing sparks at it. Next thing you know, they're on fire. So it doesn't take much to just think about it. And also, after you cut a piece of metal, if you look closely there, there's some little sharp edges. Grab your grinder and just clean those off. And it makes it that much nicer to work with. Even if you know you're gonna have to grind it a little bit more to get it to fit where you want it, just get all those sharp edges off, and then you're that much closer to getting work done. Most pieces of tubing have some sort of seam in them. You can see this seam right here. Sometimes when you reach inside the tube, you can feel a little bit of a seam inside there. There you can see the seam running down it. I'm gonna cut it so that that's the part that I'm not using. Does that really matter? Probably not. But the seam is where the piece of tubing was formed and then welded when it was in production, when it was manufactured. And some people, like when they're building cages, like all my old kind of fabricator buddies, they always try to put that seam on the inside so it's not visible, or the inside of a curve, or whatever. There's lots of theories about that seam. I'm pretty sure it's never going to be a problem for this little Jeep, but if you're building something, that's just a mark that you can kind of recognize, and if you can kind of hide it, it seems to be like the thing that old fabricator guys like to do. So I know that I'm not going to use the side with the seam, so this is going to be the face that I'm using. I know that I need 3.5 inches down from the top, and then I'll probably just add like a little bit on the back side, maybe 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going to set this tool to 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to grab this piece of metal and just slide this down. Then flip it over. So that white line there, you can just see, that's where I'm going to cut it. I'm either going to cut it with a plasma cutter, you could cut it with a cutoff wheel with a grinder, you can cut it with a torch if you're really good, you can cut it with a grinder, you can cut it with a sawzall. There's lots of different ways that you can cut this. I will probably dig out my plasma cutter and just run a straight line down through there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this side, mark a little line just a little bit down from that. Here is my plasma cutter. Hook the power up. This part is the torch. Basically has a little trigger. You push this down and then it sparks and then blows compressed air through there, which kind of blows through the flame and helps cut the metal. You will need to also hook up a ground. So this is the ground, much like on a welder. Also, when you use the plasma cutter, it's going to use the compressed air, and then the air compressor is going to kick on and make a whole bunch of noise. Now you can freehand the torch down that straight line. Because we're welding it back onto a piece of metal, it'd be nice to have that as straight as possible. I'm just going to grab this piece of aluminum that I use. It's just a, I don't even know what it's from. Kind of looks like a door jamb, but it's perfectly straight as far as I can tell, and it's been great over the years to use as a guide. So I will basically set this up as a guide on here based on our mark. And then I may even come in with a clamp just to make everybody feel good. There we go. I don't think it's a bad idea to use a welding helmet. Some of these you can adjust the settings for cutting versus welding. I think it's good to have, because especially if you're using the guard, which helps you kind of keep it all in line, but having the welding helmet just protects you from all the spatter from the plasma cutter, plus it kind of protects your eyes from the really bright light. Now just flip it over, and I'll do the same thing on the other side, and we will have our L-shaped piece. It's funny, the piece I'm getting rid of is probably almost identical to the piece that I'm keeping, so which is good, because if I screw up the first one, I got a backup. So there's our piece. It's basically going to sit on the front of the bumper like this. It's got a little bit of a lip on the back just for a little bit of rigidity. It's going to go in here basically like that. I need to clean up the ends a little bit so that it fits, because none of this is really perfectly square. I got to clean all the slag off and clean all the sharp edges off. And then we will slowly do some grinding, get it test fit in here, and then weld it in. Perfect. I'm just using a sanding disc on my grinder. I'm not using a stone, I'm not using a flap wheel. So for now, I'm just using a sanding disc. I don't even know what grit this is. It's pretty rough. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. All right, it seems like the top is just about perfect. It might need just a little bit of massaging. The bottom is still a little bit too wide and too long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just gently, gradually bring the ends in and then bring it up. Just kind of sanding back and forth and hit it the corners. And then those corners are gonna be round because this isn't really squared off. There's like welds and all types of boogers and stuff in there. So I'm gonna try to just get that thing to fit in there nice and tight and smooth. And then we can come in and burn it in. This is just 1/8 inch, which isn't really that beefy, but the factory bumper is probably the same thing. Right here in this section, it looks like they kind of cut it and capped it and knocked it over, which is not really normal. But then we have this 1/2 inch beef down here. So that's kind of what we're welding to. Yeah. The top's really good. And we just gotta kind of come in here. The other thing you can do is kind of hold it in place and then come in behind here, mark everything. And then you can see the line is kind of like right at the edge, but there's a little bit there that needs to get cleaned off. Also, because that thing's at an angle, that line's not going to be perfect. You don't want to grind that all the way. Like you don't want to grind all of that line away. You just want to kind of get that little shiny edge and kind of work into it. I like to cut the pieces large, grind and grind and grind and smooth. Otherwise, you end up with something that just might not fit. We're getting there. The other thing to remember when you're grinding or cutting, where there's sparks are spraying, I was saying don't spray it at things that are going to catch on fire. Also, don't spray it, try not to spray it right back into your sweatshirt. Your shirt will catch on fire or it could ruin it. So kind of like stand off at an angle a little bit. There's always going to be some sparks, but we're getting there. I did a fair bit of grinding, and this looks like it's going to fit right in there. I think at the end of the day, if I hit this with a little bit of green paint, it's not really green, it's kind of a oregano. It's like a really light green. If I get this thing tacked in there so that I have a level, of a straight line from here to here, and then the same across the front with this piece in, I think I'll be pretty good to go. I'm not too concerned about, like I think I would rather weld it, build it up a little, and then grind it smooth so that when it has a coat of paint on it, it doesn't look like there's a piece welded in here. I think I'm going for the, it was always like this type look. Though it is a farm Jeep, so not too concerned. But yeah, I think we got it just about there. I'm going to put some clamps on this, try to get all of this level and this level and that level and that level, and then get to tacking and see how she does. There's two. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then across the face. Ha! All right, don't move. Let's get some welding system set up here. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. I welded it across the top, down the front, across the bottom, up and around. And I went back inside and I put a couple little stitches inside there. So I'm going to grind this so it's flush the whole way and then hit it with some primer. And I think nobody will know the difference. Lots of grinding dust. I don't usually wear a mask when I grind, but I probably should. Have you guys seen those things? There's somebody making these little like filter things that you stick in your nostrils. Like you stick these little things up your nose for when you're cutting and grinding. I can tell you that when I grind, then when I blow my nose later, it's like all the grinding dust just went right up my nose. I think that looks pretty good. I mean, there's a little porosity in the welds right here. Maybe I didn't get it clean enough before I welded it. Maybe the welder was acting up. But I think it's pretty good. I'm gonna come in here with some primer it, and I think I have a primer that's actually close to this color. Let me look. I think I'm wrong. I think all the primer I have is gray. I know I used a kind of a green primer on something before. Oh, it's kind of greenish. I mean, it's definitely a different color, but it's pretty close. Look, if you stand back here and you squint and you kind of stand on one foot, it looks like it's factory. I dig it. It's a pretty easy, simple little project, and now I have a bumper back on my Jeep that looks pretty factory. Next time, we're gonna move on to something more productive like that transfer case or that engine, but this was something that I wanted to get done, and I figured it'd be a quick, fun little project. Now I got to sweep up a bunch of grinding dust and go blow my nose. All right, that's it for this Dirt Daily. Work on your junk. Even if it's not what it really needs, if it's something, if you can get something done, something's better than nothing. Maybe need some more paint. We'll see you guys next time.